Hello and welcome to The Race, a new show with Navarra Media looking at the news and stories in and around the Labour leadership as we go all the way through to 24th of September. Yes, we'll be looking at endorsements and nominations, but more importantly, we'll be looking at the biggest story of crisis, austerity, the Labour Party and the future of social democratic politics. I'm joined by Sophie Nazemi. Hi, Sophie.
Hi.
Sophie is a student at King's College London. She is an activist with London Young Labour. We'll both be talking about, I guess, a story each, which we find particularly interesting. We think you'll find them interesting too. I'm going to be looking at a fantastic video by a guy called Ayop Let's Talk. He's from the West Midlands. Sorry for my accent. And it's a fantastic video. It's really great. It's titled, "Do the Labour Party Actually Know How to Be Electable?"
Being electable isn't taking your members to court so that you can stop them from voting and then appealing that very decision with your members' money. If people are looking at this from outside that aren't Labour voters or kind of considering voting Labour, and one of the main problems Labour Party has is being tarnished with this brush that they're crap with money, why are you going to use members' money to take them to court? Do you not see how this looks to people?
He says Labour keep on saying, or the Labour establishment, the Labour apparatus, they're talking about electability. This is the defining issue around whether or not people should support Jeremy Corbyn. He makes a great point. He says, how electable does it look when you're a party that's widely viewed as being incompetent with the economy and your top dogs, you know, a subcommittee of the NEC decides to splash £250,000 on court cases, right? In addition to that, he talks about Owen Smith's promise for a second referendum. And again, how electable is it when you've got 52% of the vote sort of being dismissed? It doesn't sound to me like it's a good way of winning them back by saying, let's have a second referendum. I don't know what you think, Sophie.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a concern. My experience of canvassing during the EU referendum, speaking to a lot of people that are part of our traditional voting base and have left the party over the years, there was a real anti-establishment feeling that was going on. I think to see a lot of Westminster MPs now talking about a second referendum is going to push those people out of the party for good. And we need to be actually listening to people's concerns rather than saying, we gave you the power, we had a referendum, we put democracy into your own hands, you made your choice, and we think you're wrong, so we're going to override that.
Can I ask you a quick question? So if there was a second referendum, and let's say, well, regardless of the outcome actually, do you think there would be a real chance after that of Labour losing a serious number of seats to UKIP, particularly in the north?
I think so. I think it would really push the narrative that Labour doesn't understand what's going on in the north, anywhere outside of London. London voted overwhelmingly for in, but we do need to be, as a party, speaking to our members and understanding the concerns that a lot of them have that did push people towards that leave vote.
So, second story.
So I wanted to talk about the CLP nominations that are going on across the country now, with CLPs meeting to endorse who they think should be Labour leader. The current stats are that of 213 constituencies that have made supporting nominations, 186 have endorsed Corbyn to 27 for Smith. I think there's a big narrative in the press at the moment that it is kind of the membership is a distinct group, distinct from the electorate. And I think that's something that we need to be talking about and countering as a party. So the idea that the people that make up the membership of these CLPs have different concerns and therefore cannot understand the electorate seems a bit odd to me. These CLPs are the grassroots of not only our party but society. These are teachers, mums, dads, grannies, granddads that have the concerns that we need to be dealing with as a party. And it's also these people that are the activists that go out, pound the doorsteps, get Labour candidates elected. So I think it's really interesting that so many people have endorsed Corbyn, and I think it's kind of the key part of how we're going to win a general election under Jeremy Corbyn is through those activists across the country.
And these are huge numbers coming to many of these
nomination
meetings, right?
People are saying the numbers going to CLPs meetings have tripled, and a lot of the time they're hardly the most exciting things. Lots of motions, very procedural. It's an incredible engagement in democracy that we haven't seen in this country for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we had our CLP meeting last night. I live in South East London. 180 people. And I was talking to one of the vice chairs, and when she was chosen as delegates to go to conference. There was 9 people in that meeting, so 180. That's not even including the new members. So yeah, I actually found it. I mean, people say it's boring. I found it really exciting. I mean, because you're part of a national thing, right? And there are real consequences, and it's not often in a local meeting that you tie yourself into a bigger national story.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more exciting. I think there's just such a sense of camaraderie that's kind of developing that we really need to be building on. It's an engagement in politics that I'd learned that was dead, that people no longer saw parties as representing them. We're now the biggest centre-left party in Europe. It's incredible. We need to stop this war on members and actually realise that these members are the asset to our movement. They are what makes our party what it is, and it's what's going to get us a Labour government.
Right. Well, on that note, great. We're going to pass over now to Michael Walker. He's with Zoe Williams and James Meadway. Hello, Michael.
Thanks for that, Aaron. So for the second part of the show, we'll always be chatting with 2 politicians, academics, journalists about the latest events on the campaign and the debates surrounding it. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by James Meadway, who's head of policy for the campaign, and Zoe Williams, a Guardian journalist. I should quickly make a disclaimer. I am in the pay of the campaign, but for a slightly unrelated job, I do volunteer mobilisation. This won't be a dogmatic space. Zoe, you supported Corbyn for the last campaign.
Yeah.
You've changed your mind this time.
Yeah.
Why? What's gone on?
Look, I haven't changed my mind. I think he's probably going to win, and I'm not going to kind of beat my breast about that. I'm not thinking, well, that's going to be the end of the Labour Party. Although I think it's probably the end of the Labour Party as we know it. I'm not. I suppose what went on from my point of view was I was really, really, really disappointed by the EU performance. I think he was beset by hostile media. I think there was a kind of deliberated strategy not to kind of amplify his reasonable points and to amplify other things instead. But I also think that he just did not do it right. He did not. He was ambivalent about the EU as a project. When he was trying to agree with George Osborne, he found himself functionally incapable of doing so. I think that's reasonable, but it was really disappointing. I don't think he managed to make any case of I don't think he managed to make any decent, hopeful case for membership of the EU. I think it's a difficult case to make, but I think the case was there, and he didn't make it. I think he didn't cooperate well enough with people in his own party who he didn't like. None of this is stuff that I don't understand, but I was gutted. I was gutted when that didn't come together. Surrounding that, there's a kind of porousness issue. I don't think his camp has been porous enough.
What, letting new voices in?
Yeah, letting new voices in, letting new ideas in, letting new. I think there's a kind of suspicion of people who might not be kind of authentically left-wing enough when actually a lot of new ideas actually don't pass a left or right-wing test because they don't meet those criteria, but you have to be open to them anyway. So that's why I've lost heart. And I know that I'm kind of seen as the enemy now for saying that. Hey, no, not in a kind of personal way, but I know that I've kind of been shunted in a lot of minds into kind of enemy camp who, part of the mainstream media doesn't listen. I do listen, and I genuinely, there aren't many ideas of his that I disagree with. If it really is like a mass movement of people who genuinely believe in what he's saying, and I think it is, why can't he hand the baton to somebody who's a bit more of a unity candidate?
Well, the question is there a unity candidate, right? But I'm going to pass this on to James, because I mean this is a criticism that's very common, one of the most serious ones, that there's a bunker mentality, and this campaign isn't letting in a broad enough section of voices.
I mean,
Do you think there's any...
No, I don't think that's right. If you look at what's happened over the last 9-10 months or so, then the first shadow cabinet that Jeremy put together contained, I think, a broad spectrum of opinion, certainly from the Parliamentary Labour Party and from the Labour Party more widely. Somebody like Hilary Benn as shadow foreign secretary. This isn't a bunker mentality. That's flinging open the doors and saying, come one, come all at that point. And that was the shadow cabinet we had. And good, sincere efforts made to try and get the thing to hold together and to work. I mean, that's the situation there. I don't think it's right to say there's a bunker mentality at all.
In terms of the bunker mentality, though, or in terms of bringing shadow cabinet members, or bringing people from all wings of the shadow cabinet into the cabinet, one question is, you give them those positions, but do you actually give them the policy freedom, and do you actually try and come up with a programme that a broader section of the party.
As far as possible, yes, as far as possible. Of course, there is an argument ongoing about this far into any parliamentary cycle. Then we shouldn't be doing policy, and this is an argument that some people made. But I think there were very genuine efforts made by the leadership and by the Shadow Chancellor to say these are the policies we're standing for. This is what we want to do, and you can go through it. If we're talking about not opposing the government properly, this is an opposition that's now defeated the government 22 times in Parliament on critical things like tax credits, like personal independence payments. These are big, important issues. There are then relatively smaller issues, I suppose, like the Saudi prisons, like, for instance, VAT on solar panels. You can go through again and again and again. This has happened. If you look at the situation in the leadership contest now, we have a candidate who is, I think, competent, certainly. I think he's was good at his previous job as Shadow Work and Pension Secretary. This is Owen Smith, but he comes from a different wing of the party, and he is now the candidate who's basically on that wing of the party, and he's saying we need a massive investment programme, I'm opposed to austerity. This is an enormous shift in the terrain of the debate.
I think that's a really disingenuous argument. It's only a shift if you say he was on the right of the party to begin with. He never was on the right of the party. He was in that little gaggle. He was in that Lisa Nandy, Heidi Alexander, Kate Green.
I mean, this year would a leadership candidate abstain on the welfare bill? I mean, there's definitely a political reality in the Labour Party that's shifted.
He'd only just got into Parliament at that point, right? No, I'm going to say he was in 2010. The point is, it's quite, not everybody can be a rebel in a party, right? Everybody votes with the whip. Now, if there's room in the party for 10 rebels, the Tories probably have 10 rebels, Labour probably have 10 rebels. There are voices that say you shouldn't have any rebels. You either have everybody obeying the whip or you give up on the whip. I'm sort of agnostic about that. But I really thought abstaining on the welfare bill was absolute horseshit. I thought it was terrible. I argued with loads of MPs about it at the time on BBC Radio Wales.
But if you did it now, they'd agree with you, right?
I thought it was horseshit. But I did not think it was coming from anywhere apart from Harriet Harman. And I think this kind of pouring over somebody's the legitimate thing that they did because their leadership said to do. It does not make them on the Blairite wing of the party, unless you say the entire. Unless you say the entire party was
just to be clear in this one,
I
haven't described Owen as a Blairite.
You said he was on the right of the party.
No, relative to where Jeremy Corbyn and the leadership of the party.
Yeah, but this is what I mean by bunker mentality, right? It's like for the Jeremy Corbyn voice.
Isn't this a reasonable description? Unless you're both saying that they both agree with each other in the entirety of every issue going. Which, I mean, frankly, if you look at what Owen's been saying, he's turning around saying he does agree on the need to end austerity. And that is exactly my point. Look at how far the debate has shifted. That you've gone from a situation in the leadership contest last year where you had one candidate saying let's end austerity, and now you have both candidates
but you're saying that as though
so it's a shift. It's very hard to say. Very hard to say that the debate hasn't moved.
It's absolutely brilliant that there's been a shift, but I do not think that
who's principally responsible for shifting
Well, I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's competence is principally responsible for shifting it. Put it that way.
Nonetheless, the shift has happened.
The shift has happened because
I mean, this movement was never about his competence, though, right? I mean,
and
this is why I want to bring us back
to
the idea of blaming him for the discord in the PLP. Because the reason I personally am excited by this project and will put a lot of energy behind it is that you've got, I mean, on the left or our parts of the left, you've always had the theory that if you want any genuine progressive change, you're going to need not just a competent politician, but you're going to need a huge movement behind it so you can actually mobilise popular power.
No, I mean, nobody's against the movement.
Yeah. But if you've got this, if you set Jeremy Corbyn the task of keeping this excited popular movement with a drive and desire for radical change, and to keep 50% of his party happy who have a quite different conception of politics. Have you set him an impossible task?
I don't think it's... I mean, look, as far as I'm aware, there is a hardcore of probably 12 seriously quite right-wing Labour MPs who would happily see the party fail rather than let Corbyn have his head. I think that's probably true. In fact, I think that's definitely true. And I think there is a view that it's Corbyn or nothing, that nothing else can really realise the kind of potential of the movement, that nothing else can express the hopes and dreams of momentum, that nothing else can really satisfy the new members or the kind of re-energised old members, and I think there are probably 12 of those. And I think there are a lot of people between those two polls who do, there's a huge variety of views. Not all of them could be classified as left and right. Not all of them could be classified as old and new. Many of them are the same as Corbyn's. But sorry, go.
Well, look, the problem here, I think, is that you're dealing with, and it is a mass movement, it's a social movement, at least to that extent. When you have, literally tens of thousands of people turning up for open-air rallies, in Liverpool, in the rain as it happens, or we were just down in Cornwall last weekend. There's in Liscar, tiny little place, 9,000 people, population, 400 of them turned up to hear a talk on economics by the Shadow Chancellor. This is quite big. And the trouble is with dealing with something that's big like that and is a movement like that, I don't think you just sort of turn around and go, oh, who's at head of it? Well, actually, we think maybe there's someone else who could do this better, so we'll just kind of put them there. You can't kind of take one head off and put another one in place. That's not how this works.
Well, I don't
because it's
really
important,
agree with that.
I think it's important.
I think the wave comes before the surfer. And I don't really agree with it. I think
it's important because in this case, the bit that comes always through, continually, when people talk about Jeremy, his greatest strength, not just with
he
people.
seems quite straight, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's his integrity.
That is true, but he's not the only.
That is something that comes across not just with the people who are there at the rallies and the rest of it. Yeah. It's something that has quite a lot of appeal when you look. Who are the most distrusted people in British society, right?
Yeah,
first of all, journalists, I think, maybe, then politicians.
No,
but
it's politicians above journalists. Thank you very much. Economists have not got a great rap.
Not doing too well, right?
So you're head of policy. You are now a politician.
It gets worse and worse and worse. But let's say politicians, right? Least trusted. Now, if you have a politician, everybody says whatever else you think about him, he sticks to his guns, and he has done for a really long time.
Absolutely,
that is an immense strength. That is what helps pull things together.
I'm really glad you brought this up, because the reason he's trusted is because he does stick to his guns, and he has said exactly the same thing for a really, really, really long time. But that also, that also affects his agility, and it affects his ability to move, and it affects his ability. He tends to kind of resist first and not really question what happens. And I think there are new precepts. It is true. James, I'm older than you. I can remember. I've got letters that my mum wrote to Jeremy Corbyn in 1983. His position was exactly the same. His position on everything was exactly the same. The very primacy of Trident as one of his platforms is so 80s. It's unbelievable.
Well, all right. Give me a specific example.
I think to just talk about the qualities of Jeremy Corbyn is missing a trick, though, really. I'm not that interested in Jeremy Corbyn defending his competence or etc.
If you're not interested in him, why can't you allow somebody who believes the same as him but just has more agility?
In theory, if there was a candidate that was all of these things and existed.
If Clive Lewis took it, or if Lisa Nandy took it, what would you say?
Well, Clive Lewis has been an MP for 18 months.
Yeah, no, he's too new and take. So if Lisa Nandy stood, what would you say?
Lisa Nandy, I don't really know enough about her, but her campaign managing Owen Smith's campaign, the fact that Lisa Nandy's gone on that side, to me, means I wouldn't really trust her as leader of the Labour Party in this moment.
So listen to yourself. What you're saying is, I wouldn't trust anybody. Of course I would trust somebody. This isn't a personality cult for Corbyn. I would trust anybody who thought broadly what Corbyn thought. And yet anybody who goes against Corbyn is automatically distrusted by me.
Well, it's not going... There's a difference between someone being a different person and someone actively opposing what I see as sort of like a democratic movement within the Labour Party. There's nothing wrong with criticising Jeremy Corbyn, but for me, instigating a coup and trying to overthrow the guy is a bit much.
Smith, Nandy, Alexander, they were the last people standing in Jeremy's team saying, can't we just work this out? Do we have to take all these resignations? Can you not promote some people from that wing, just more junior, who might be more pliable? They were really trying to forge some kind of compromise situation, and they rebelled at the very last instance because no compromise was possible. Now, I think to then say, ergo, Nandy's politics aren't left enough is just... what you're doing is you're taking Jeremy Corbyn as
talking here.
We're talking here about something that doesn't exist. What we're actually doing is in the middle of a leadership contest, or is Jeremy Corbyn as one candidate and Owen Smith as the other one. Now, on the question of agility, on the question of being open to new ideas, look, for instance, at what both him and John McDonnell have been saying about universal basic income. This is an idea that straddles left and right.
That's brilliant.
Right? You can start to come up
I'm
with.
really happy
look
about
at what
that.
he's saying about the environment. Look what he's been saying
No,
about
I think the
community.
environmental stuff is really lame.
Exactly. You think it's really lame?
Yeah, it's slow and lame. I mean, this could have...
Community generation, for instance, the support for community generation.
This is so frustrating because we were trying to talk to him about this 9 months ago, and
it's all there in the policy document from last year when he stood,
it's genuinely
and it's
not
all there, very clear in the 10
Oh,
pages.
you're kidding me? Are you really going to say that was actually?
I think we'll continue this afterwards. Okay. Thank you both so much. Brilliant first episode. Tune in for the next one in a week or so.